All right. Welcome everybody to another episode of Seat Automotive Podcast. Your buddy CJ here, talking to you about all things automotive industry, the car guy hobby, cars. This is the place to be. If you're a car geek, if you a gearhead, if you just love cars and the automotive industry in general, and if you like your buddy CJ, you love talking about all this stuff, welcome. And I'm glad you guys are here. I love you. Please give me a like and subscribe. Leave comments, folks. I'll get to all those comments that I can. There's been great interaction so far on the new channel here. A lot of fun, and I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to come on here tonight and talk to you about something. The EV market. U.S. government, what are you doing? Guys, for 2024, unfortunately, for those that were considering buying a new EV, for many of us and for many of you, you can kiss your EV tax credit goodbye, wholesale, or you might see a significant reduction. What are we talking about here? And let me start out by saying, the purpose of this channel is not to get political, but this is a topic. These changes in the rules around EV tax credits are pervasive right now for the consumer, the car guy, the car girl who's considering buying an EV, whether that's you or me or any of us here in the US. And there are some political implications to this, so I'm going to touch on it. But again, I promise you I won't bore you with a bunch of politics. What does this mean to us? So first things first, let's go back in time. Let's go back in time, folks, because it's relevant. And I don't like hypocrisy. You'll see where I'm going with this. Do you remember when this whole EV thing started in the big push by the government? Global governments, for that matter, municipalities. It was all about save the planet. The enemy was fossil fuel. We were looking to protect Mother Earth. It was the right thing to do. Climate change, global warming, the evil that internal combustion engines do to our environment. That's what this was about. Let's be real talk. That's what we do here. That was the mission and objective. And regardless of where you sit or stand politically, you can see merits in that. You may not agree with it, but you can kind of understand where they were going if that objective was sincere and real. So in the spirit of that, if we really want to incentivize every American, every global citizen to go EV and do what's right for the environment, why not incentivize all? An incentive for all, right? Across socioeconomic classes, across geographies, whether you're buying a micro subcompact or a goosed out SUV or a performance car or a luxury sedan or just daily transportation, simple vehicle. If you're going to go EV or plug-in hybrid, there should be an incentive for all is one way to look at it. Because if the sincere intent and objective is to eventually eliminate or at least significantly reduce carbon footprint and emissions and reduce our dependence on and use of fossil fuels and protect Mother Earth and to reduce our dependency on the internal combustion engine, then we want this to be, an omni incentive. We want this to be something that everyone will want to get on board with. From the poor to the rich, to the middle class, to the upper middle class, the lower middle class, the middle class, everybody, commercial enterprise, individuals. There should be an incentive for all if we have these lofty objectives all in. We're all on the same boat here. We're all on the same planet. And if the objective is to save the planet, then maybe I'm an idealist. Maybe I'm a dreamer. But don't you think we should make it kind of easy financially and fiscally and incentivize folks to go EV? Because God knows there are detriments. There are challenges with going EV. I've got other episodes that kind of talk about this, but you guys know what they are. Limitations in charger availability, limitations in range anxiety, general reluctance to adopt something as innovative and disruptive as an EV. The last thing you want to do, right, is make it hard fiscally. And what's the number one thing you can do for most people to incentivize them, to influence their spending habits? one of the most important things you can do is offer me a discount. Fatten my pockets, baby. Give me a rebate. Give me a tax incentive. Subsidize, for lack of a better term, subsidize my move to EV. Well, guess what? Unfortunately, in 2024, welcome to the brave new year, it's gotten a lot harder. It's gotten a lot harder to get a tax incentive from the US government. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. Take a look at this. We'll look at this together, folks. Mustang Mach-E. Ford betting a lot on this vehicle. Look at that. It's a sharp-looking vehicle. It's not for everybody, right? But look at the styling. They've got a GT model. Look at the color, right? Maybe you were planning on getting one of these in 2024. You were waiting because you heard that it might be easier to get that financial incentive, that tax incentive, that rebate from the US government in 2024. Guess what? Not eligible. Ford Mustang Mach-E, not eligible. You are not getting a federal incentive on your taxes, a tax rebate on this vehicle. It's absurd. And why? Why, folks? Let's talk about minerals and sourcing. So remember when we talked about the original objective of so much of this legislation and this narrative was to save the planet. It was to stop and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and the internal combustion engine, the evil internal combustion engine. Well, guess what? Now the federal government says, whoa, wait a minute. We don't want you buying electric vehicles that have components made in places like China, North Korea, and Russia. So they're either limiting or eliminating that tax incentive, whether it's the $7,500 version or the one that's lower, $3,750, if you don't meet that criteria. If you don't have supply chain, sourcing, materials, whether it's cells, battery components, or the minerals themselves that meet the federal government's criteria based on, wait a minute, now we got evil China, North Korea, and Russia, then you can't get your incentive. Sorry. Again, who suffers? You and I suffer. And one way to look at that is, well, wait a minute, CJ. The federal government is saying, listen, we want to see this manufacturing, all of that come into the U.S. around cells, around batteries, around the minerals. Let's support U.S. manufacturing. Yeah, but except it's going to take time. That's going to require investment and time. So there's that. Number two, why are you, federal government, why are you looking at the automotive industry to fight your battle with China, North Korea, and Russia? You knew, everybody knew, 70%, I think it's like 70%, maybe more, of the cells and the battery components, something like that. You guys know I don't go crazy with metrics and numbers on this podcast, but I'm directionally correct when I say somewhere around 70% of these battery components, these cells, are made in China. That didn't happen overnight. You knew that when you started this big push. So now you're trying to retrofit and walk it back. At whose expense? At the expense of the consumer. And stop lying. Just stop. You're not going to fix the global dependence on the manufacturing machine and industry outside of the US. You're not going to repair that and bring all those jobs back to the US. All right, support America, America first. You're not going to do it by picking on EV in the automotive industry. Stop it. Just stop it. So that's one thing, right? And I say there's hypocrisy there, but it gets worse, folks. So let me show you something else. Now, maybe forget about the Mach-E for a minute. Maybe you were looking to go up market. You're doing well, and you're in the market for, let's say, more of a luxury EV. You're going to buy a luxury vehicle, a luxury sedan, let's say, in 2024. And you've been successful in life, and you understand fiscal components and financial incentives. So you say, you know what? There's the Mercedes-Benz EQS. There's a fully loaded Tesla Model S I might consider. And because I'm frugal with my money, and that's the reason I've been successful. I want my financial incentive from a tax standpoint. Try again. Neither of these vehicles are eligible in the United States for federal tax incentive. So do you see what just happened there? And part of, your initial reaction might be, well, so what? If you can afford that car, CJ, you don't need it. You don't need the incentive. That's the wrong way to look at it, folks. That's the wrong way to look at it. A lot of people with the resources and the disposable income to buy a vehicle like this, oh no, make no mistake, they are motivated by financial incentives. Don't get it twisted. So you've just alienated a massive cross-section of society because, first of all, let's be blunt. I say it's a massive cross-section, but not everybody can afford a vehicle like this. These are expensive vehicles. You're looking at north of 75K, depending on the Tesla, depending on how you option it, around 100K, maybe more. I believe the Mercedes EQS sedan starts north of 100K. So there's actually a relatively small, much smaller percentage of people who can afford that type of car as it is. And what you've done is you've further limited those out of that population who are even going to consider an EV because they're going to say to heck with it. If you don't want to offer me the incentive, I'm going to run my twin turbo V6 or my high output V8. I'll go buy an S-Class Mercedes, or I'll buy a fully loaded Audi, or I'll buy the Cadillac Escalade, because you're not offering me the incentive to go EV. So again, stop the nonsense. Remember what I said at the top of the episode. We started this journey, fossil fuels were the enemy. And it didn't say fossil fuels were bad if they come from rich people, or, internal combustion engines were only bad if they come from lower middle class people. That's nonsense. That's bunk. What we want to do is incentivize everyone to go there, if that's where we want to go. This is not an episode to trash or to, applaud the merits of going EV. That's not what this episode is about. It's knowing that the government and global governments, municipalities, etc., are all on this kick to push EV, and it's a movement, and there's legislation, and it's happening. Why would the federal government do this? They're making it harder to achieve these incentives and harder to obtain, instead of going the other way, right? And it's got a phased model to sort of make it more restrictive over time. It's absurd. So I want to give you a list, folks, by the way. Let's go to a list here, and I'll talk to you about some vehicles that are still available to you and I. The Chevy Bolt, a couple different versions. The Ford F-150 Lightning EV, you can still get your full $7,500 incentive. Tesla Model 3, but not all of them. Not all the Tesla Model 3s are eligible. Tesla Model X, Y, again, you got to look at the details. I'm going to show you a page in a moment that's going to break it down for you from the federal government. It's going to spell out which ones are eligible. Chrysler Pacifica. Let's talk, and then there's some that are eligible for the 3750. There's a Ford Escape, and there's a Lincoln that's available, and a few others. What's absent from the list? I mentioned the Mach-E. How about, the Nissan Leaf? That Nissan Leaf had a pretty good brand. I don't follow Nissan closely in terms of their EVs. Not really my thing. But I know the Nissan Leaf had pretty good uptake, and it's geared towards a market that could probably benefit. Let's be blunt. Your average Leaf buyer would probably be very interested in a financial incentive, a tax incentive, a rebate. Are you kidding me? Can't get it. Here's a Leaf. Here's a vehicle that's viable to the potential buyer of an EV or a plug-in hybrid, and you can't get the incentive. What's going on here? So there's a Hyundai and a Kia as well that have been removed. I want to show you guys, and you can spend some time taking a look at this yourself. But I want you to know that there's a whole website dedicated to this. And here it is. And what we're looking at here is basically a chart breaking it down for you. Okay, this chart really breaks it down for you. As of January 1, these are the vehicles. Now, at first glance, you may say that looks like a lot, but for example, you see you got the Bolt EUV and the and the Bolt EV, both available for $7,500. A couple versions of the Lightning, Rivian, but again, there's a cap. There's an MSRP limit. You can see there's a couple of Teslas listed here. That's it for all electric. Now, if you go plug-in hybrids, these are the plug-in hybrids. Look at how the list has been reduced. This list has been, I believe, less than halved. This list was a lot larger for 2022, 2023, and it's gotten worse for you and I. For you and I, for the little guy. These are the only vehicles, plug-in hybrid, that are eligible for the rebate. And then this is the list of all. And you can go to this site. It's fueleconomy.gov. Check it out. It's an interesting read, but you can see these vehicles here. Absent from this list, things like the Cybertruck, forget about it, right? There's all kinds of constraints that could cause vehicles to not be eligible. I mentioned the sourcing. There's also a weight restriction. There's an income consideration. Individuals who make a certain amount as individuals or as head of household or married filing jointly, if you're making a certain income, not eligible anyway. So there's all these restrictions and challenges with this. So instead of getting easier and really meeting that initial objective, folks, is the point, it's actually getting a lot harder to get these incentives, which seems to be in conflict. Isn't that in conflict? Can't we call the hypocrisy on that? Guys, are you with me? Do you not see the hypocrisy? Maybe you disagree with me. Leave comments. I'll respond to those that I can. I'd love to talk to you about it. There's tension and conflict between, we want EV to be the pervasive new platform for motor vehicles, for every man, for your average American across the country. Yet, whoa, wait a minute. The government's got other objectives. We're not just here to save the planet. We've got to do something about global supply chain. We've got to do something about our, I don't want to say political enemies, but nation states that the U.S. government is concerned about, whether it's China, Russia, or North Korea. So now they put that in there. Then we don't want to offer financial incentives to those Americans who are doing very well. Sadly, these are also people, and I think the government underestimates this, who appreciate and do this research and who are super interested in optimizing their spend. So while you may not think that $7,500 tax credit means anything to someone who's more well off, actually, in many cases, you're wrong, because they do see that as a financial incentive and fiscal kicker, if you will. And it certainly doesn't help. And there are people who say, to heck with it, I want to go EV anyway, CJ. I'm going EV because it's the right thing to do, and I'm here for it. Fine, but you're certainly not helping the case. You're certainly not helping the case. So anyway, guys, I just wanted to come on here tonight and talk a bit about this. I do see significant hypocrisy and sort of conflict between the U.S. government pushing, specifically U.S. government, even though it's a global initiative. Let's talk U.S. government pushing for EV and for you and I specifically, and for big business to get on board. Yet one of the the grease for the wheels, if you will, the grease for the gears, something that could be an accelerator, is the financial incentive from the federal government. They're making that harder for you and for me to get. And I claim there's a problem. And I think a big part of the problem, candidly, if you look into this, is the political agendas, the alternative agendas that are there. I promised you I wouldn't get too political, and I hope I didn't. But I did want to make you aware that unfortunately we can kiss some of our EV tax credits goodbye hard in 2024. And it impacts you and I. It also impacts the automotive industry, because a lot of manufacturers, kind of hard to feel sorry for big business sometimes, I know, as a consumer. But if you're a proponent of the automotive industry, okay, you have to consider that, big business is also placing big bets on this stuff. And anything you do as the federal government that puts up barriers to selling units, whether it's the Mercedes units or the Tesla units or the Nissan units or the Ford units, you're hurting commerce. Well, we want to do something about China and North Korea. Well, that's a whole other kettle of fish. And if you pull those two objectives together, you're going to greatly constrain what was to be the primary objective, which is save the planet, save the environment. So that's what I think about this. Hot Seat Automotive Media Podcast. I hope to hear from you guys. Leave your comments. Give me a like and subscribe. I love you guys. And listen, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.